Welcome to Season 2 of Faith and Work. I am so glad you're here. Before we talk about careers and classrooms and leadership and people from history, we wanted to start this season with a story, our story. Today's episode is a little different than what is coming later on this season. It's a little lighter, a little bit more personal, and honestly, it's a chance for you to get to know us, me and my husband, David. This is the story of how we met, what we thought we wanted, what we definitely did not expect, and how God, in His own way, took two people from very different places and slowly brought us to where we are now. Later on in Season 2, you'll hear about our marriage, about David's work as a history teacher, about faith in the classroom, and about people from history who lived out their calling in meaningful ways. But before we dive into any of that, we wanted to start at the beginning, because sometimes it's not just the polished version of life that tells the best story. It's the awkward start, the really funny moments, and the unexpected turns that remind us how faithfully God works behind the scenes. So today, pull up a chair, get comfortable, get some coffee, and enjoy this conversation, because this one is just getting to know us, how it all got started, and maybe a little laughter along the way. So let's jump in to Episode 1, Season 2 of Faith and Work. Hello and welcome to Faith and Work Season 2. I'm so excited to have you joining us for Season 2. We are really excited to be here together on this very first episode. I have my husband David here with me.
Hello, world.
So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can actually watch the video of this episode on YouTube. I won't be doing video in every episode, but some episodes in Season 2, we are going to start incorporating some video. So David is here with me. There are several episodes in Season 2 that I really wanted David to share his unique perspective of faith and work from being a school teacher. There's also some really unique people in history that David has studied, and he's really great at talking about how they integrated their faith with their pieces of history. And so I would love for him to come on future episodes. Before we did future episodes, we wanted to tell our story of how we met and all that good stuff, just so you could kind of get to know him. And we've told this story a couple of times, and it's always a little dramatic, and it takes a while to tell it. So I'm glad we're finally getting to tell it, and it's going to be recorded, which is really cool. So hopefully our kids can go back one day and listen to it, which will be fun.
Yes, that's wonderful. We have shared our story a few times, and people always say, you really should, record that. And so, but we have no notes. We haven't really prepped that much here, so we might be out of order, but it is a bit entertaining.
Yeah.
And, the story of our relationship is actually kind of like this podcast, because after months and months of begging and asking, I finally said yes.
Oh, that's not how it happened. That's not at all how it happened. It was not at all that. So one of the first movies we ever watched together after we started dating was Pride and Prejudice. And David likes to say that I had the pride and the prejudice. I don't think that's true.
No, I said you had the pride. You were prejudiced because you thought I had the pride. She thought I had both.
That is true. That part's true. I did think he was a little snooty, and I did not like him at all. But let's start in the very beginning, how we initially first met. The very first time we met, I will let you get us kicked off.
Yes, we all struggle with pride. But I think the things that she thought was more of me just having my head in the clouds,
yeah,
which I've been accused of ever since I've been alive. And there's a lot of truth to that. So I was born in Pennsylvania in 1985. I trusted Christ at 5 years old. And at 12 years old, I gave my life to Christ. And I came here to Tennessee to attend Crown College. And I got my first degree there. I stayed on for another one. And then after my master's, they asked me to help out in the admissions office. And it was great. I was picking up right after in the fall. And so my first job was to help get students all ready for the spring semester. Of course, that's usually a smaller amount of students coming in the spring. And the first time I met Carole was when her application showed up in the admissions office. It was a little bit unique because I was entering my second master's program, and Carole was coming in as a freshman, but we were only 1 month apart.
So I was going to community college back at home where I lived in North Carolina. I had also taken some time off right after high school to travel. I went on several mission trips. I went to Brazil. I went to Mexico twice. So I was really enjoying being out of high school. And I did do community college. I did several correspondence courses. I did other writing classes, but I wasn't really pursuing a degree. I was just taking different types of classes that I was interested in at the time. So I came to college at 23 was when I came to Crown.
That's right. She was born in 1985 too, on October 21st, and I was born September 23rd. So less than a month apart we
Yep.
were. Which, of course, and I had not, I wasn't dating anyone. I had no girlfriends. And so the two secretaries in the office, they kept on teasing me about this girl that was coming to Crown who was only 1 month apart from me. And so that drew some ire. And also, she would call into the office almost every day.
I had questions. I had lots of questions.
Yes. If you know Carole at all, she won't take no for an answer. So
I had never even been to the college. So I had never even stepped on the campus. So I didn't know what kind of should I bring cleaning supplies? What about this? What about that? I had all the questions.
exactly how many inches are
I did
from
ask
the
that.
floor to the bunk and back
I
and
did
forth?
because I wanted to know how much storage I had under the bed because they said, no problem, you have under the bed storage. And I was like, well, how much room are we talking about? Is it a raised bed? Is it not a raised bed? I had a lot of questions. So I was calling in, and every time I called, this guy named David Evans would answer the phone, or the secretaries in the office would say, hey, David's not here right now. He'll call you back later. And my family started teasing me, and they were like, oh, David Evans again. And I was like, guys, it's just coincidence. I thought when they said admissions office, I thought there was a huge room with lots of people on the phone. And I just happened to get him every time, or maybe different people were assigned different files based on their last name. So I just thought he had my section of the alphabet. I didn't know that he was the only person. I mean, Elena and Mandy were in there, but he was the main person in the office. I assumed it was a much larger operation. I did not know.
Right. So coincidence, every time she called, they'd pass me the phone and say, it's Carole again. One time the vice president came in and he was going to ask me about a student, and the girls are like, it's Carole. They're a month apart. And I looked at him, and I'm listening to Carole drone on, but I'm like, I'm sorry. I kept on mouthing to him I was sorry. So he left. And then he came back 20 minutes later. Carole's still talking.
I had more questions.
It was a great blessing. It was a blessing all the way through. And then he comes back and says, is that the same girl? And of course, my two friends sell me out. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So that was a lot of fun. She was the first one to complete her file. And of course, you have to look at her picture. Of course, a blind man could see how pretty she is. At that time, of course, I had some small interest in another girl. And I've just always been careful not to go two directions at once. So I remember distinctly putting her file in the filing cabinet, and I shut the door pretty hard, thinking, I'm not going to do that. I was also trying to be very sensitive, too, because this was my first time in the admissions office, and I didn't want people to think that I was flirting with people to get them to college. And I was really trying to be careful that was not a persona that was attributed to me.
Yeah.
And so
one of the questions I asked was I had never really been to a Christian college before. I had not visited. I had visited a couple others, but not a lot of larger named colleges. They were smaller colleges. And so one of the questions I had was about dating, because I'd heard that dating on a college campus could be high pressure, and it's really forced, and it's super awkward. And I didn't really want that environment. I didn't want a high pressured environment. So I asked him about how is that here? I didn't know what he looked like. I didn't even have Facebook yet. I couldn't Facebook stalk him or Google him. I didn't know any of that. So one of David's answers was, it's not.
Allow me.
Oh, no. Hold on. You have to just wait just a second here. So I had a question, and he said there's only 2 couple events every year. There's one in the fall and one in the spring. And he was like, in the spring, we have the Valentine banquet. In the fall, we have Sadie Hawkins, where the girl asks the guy, and it's super low key, not pressured. He was like, the Valentine banquet, not a big deal. I've taken 5 girls in 5 years. And then I was like, okay, this guy must be really attractive. If he's taken 5 girls in 5 years, just obviously
Clearly,
is
she
like
has no
going
idea what the low
around.
bar for Valentine banquet was at the time.
It sounded a little bit bragging. And I was like, 5 girls in 5 years, like, wow,
You have
you
to
got
understand
around.
the context of what I was saying. I was trying
Okay.
to de-emphasize the
Mm-hmm.
pressure that it wasn't like you were dating the person you took. It was
Mm-hmm.
more just like a social event. And that was the heavy implication I gave. But, people hear things the way they want to hear them.
Yeah.
So let's move on
Let's move
to
on.
greener
So
pastures.
I
Right.
arrived, and that was all through I started calling the office to ask questions in September, and then I came in January. So we talked on the phone off and on for months until I completed my file. I had my bags packed. I knew how much space was under the bunk bed. I knew all the things. So I came in January, and my parents dropped me off in the front office, and I got to the front office. And I did not realize David's dad was the dean of students. So his dad is in the lobby, and there's not a lot of students that come in January. So he sees my name and he said, "Oh, Carol Evans," or Carol Evans. He said, "Carol Taylor." And he said, "My son has been helping you, David Evans." And I was like, "Oh, here we go. I'm about to meet this guy." And so David comes around the corner, and I think you were wearing a light tan suit.
Just tell them how you felt, babe.
So
Don't be ashamed about it.
he was wearing a light tan suit and I think a blue tie, and he looked so sharp. And I was like, oh, he's really cute. Like, he's adorable. And I'm like, this is going to be great. Like, he's adorable. He's cute. And then as soon as he started talking, it was different than when we talked on the phone. And when he talked on the phone, he was super nice and casual and funny. And then I met him in person, and he was stoic, and he was like, "Miss Taylor, nice to meet you." And it felt cold, and it was just different. It was an overall different experience completely than what it was on the phone. And immediately I was like, I thought I was going to know somebody here. And I thought, like, it was a bonus that he was attractive. And then he was really stoic and cold. And that's where the Pride and Prejudice came in. He was like a Mr. Darcy completely.
Since we've been married, Carol's had cataract surgery, and she now knows that I'm not nearly as cute as she thought I
No,
was.
that's not true.
And I remember meeting Carol because I was called, my dad's office was just right down the hallway. And I remember thinking, I have to be so careful that I don't send out any vibes that I'm
He
trying
didn't.
to be.
Yeah.
The thing is, I love telling jokes. I like making people laugh. It's just something that I love. I love laughter for any. And sometimes that can be taken the wrong way and be interpreted as interest. And that kind of got me in trouble in the past. So I said, I have to make sure. I literally said to myself, I'm going to be cordial. I'm going to be professional. I'm going to be polite, but I'm not going to send out the excessive personality vibes for which I am famous. And so, yes, I shook her hand. I shook her mother's hand, answered any questions, and I didn't think about it again.
No. So the college we were at was very small. And so there wasn't a lot of other people that were 23 at the college. Most people were a lot younger than that. And so a lot of people immediately, as soon as they would ask, "You're here. Oh, you're new." And they would say, "How old are you?" I said, 23. And they're like, "Oh my goodness, have you met David Evans? He's 23 and he's single." And I was like, look, just because we're the same age doesn't mean we're like God's will for each other, And so I really pushed hard against it. But anytime he walked in the room, I started to notice how stoic he was in every room he walked into. And he walked into church, he was like that. Walked into the college, he was like that. He was the assistant professor for some of the classes that I had. So if the main professor was out, he would teach them. And he came in, I didn't see him like laughing or joking with anybody. He just felt very stoic all the time. He felt very like closed off, very serious. And so I thought, man, what a jerk. Like, he must think he's so smart and popular, like, whatever. So I just started getting this persona about him. And I had this idea about him probably the whole first semester. So every time he walked in the room, I was very aware because when people annoy you, you're very aware of their presence. So he would walk in the room and I was like, oh, there he is again, and I was immediately annoyed.
I had a few short interactions with her, and she would treat me mean. Now, normally
I was a
people
little
didn't
mean.
treat me mean.
A
Like
little
one
mean.
time she turned her test in the middle of all these students turning their test in. But I think she was mad because I didn't start a conversation with her
I
as
don't
I'm
remember that.
collecting tests. I
When was
remember
that?
that. You turned on your heel and walked away
What did I say?
in a huff. Nothing. That's what made you so mad.
I don't remember that one.
All right. And then they were going home for break.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And of course, they're getting up at 7 in the morning. They're not allowed to go home early,
It's ridiculous.
rules. Yes. Or no, depending on whether
It's
you're
a
a parent or a
stupid
student.
rule.
Anyway, but she was like dressed like she was going to church. I didn't understand it.
We
Everyone
were
else
at
is.
church.
It was 7 in the morning.
No,
And
before we left
home.
for break. It was like the Wednesday service before we left for break. It was not the morning of break.
That's right.
It was the Wednesday service before break.
Yes, that's right. It was Wednesday night, but she was
Mhm.
dressed like it was Sunday morning. And so, it's very hard to compliment a lady, any lady. I said, "Oh, you look very nice." And what did you say, Carol?
I said, am I the first girl that you said that to today, or do you give that compliment to every girl you meet?
You can't win for losing. You just can't win for losing these days, I'm telling you. And so I don't know why she snapped at me. I thought I wronged her in another life or something. So she had all this anger, but typical guy, I'm oblivious. They come up after
Which
break.
makes me more mad. I feel like I was giving him so many good hints to work on, and he just wasn't getting it. Wasn't getting that he was annoying me. And then when you acted oblivious, like it just fueled the fire of my anger, which was,
And she wanted me even more.
that's not true. Not yet. Eventually I would, but at that moment, I still
She just
disdain.
wanted me to know how angry she was.
I did.
Okay, so after break, my father, dean of students, chooses to appoint Carol as a resident assistant.
Yeah, it was after summer break.
Yes, I'm sorry. So she was there for a spring semester, and I actually advised my dad against it. And it wasn't because I thought she was unqualified. I knew that, if she was older, comported herself very well, had good rapport with the students. It's just that she was literally there one semester.
Yeah.
And that's just a lot to put someone in a leadership role over people who've been there for 7 semesters, and she's been there one semester. And I was afraid that might set her up for failing. I said, Dad, look, give her one more year. She will have been here for a year and a half, and then she'll be like a normal RA. But my dad was insistent. He saw something in Carol that, people see, leadership. And so he made her resident assistant.
So I was honored when they called. I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting that call. They called me and I would have to come in early that next fall semester. So I came in early. I started getting my list of all the girls that were going to be in my dorm. And then as RAs, we helped to get the dorms ready. We called everybody. We made sure their files were complete. We went through everything. David was still working in admissions. And so part of us starting to work together and really kind of how we got to know each other was now I was an RA and I had to start working. I worked with his dad a little bit before, but now his dad was kind of like my boss. It was a leader. He was over all of the RAs. So I met with him with all of the RAs weekly. We had weekly RA meetings. And then I would have to talk to David more about different students. So
especially when new students would come into the
Right.
school. Well, one thing happened that particularly galled Carol because we're starting that very fall semester. At this time, that's like the Super Bowl day for admissions. I'm literally in contact with over 200 students that are coming into the college, and I knew all of them by name. I worked with these kids for a year. You could cover up the first names of anyone on that 200-person list. If you told me the last name, I knew the first name. And I was calling people right up until where the day. This is back when you can't scroll through messages. I had an old dumb phone. At that time, I had 16 messages, but I was taking a break from that, and I would check my messages when I could. My father had me come in and talk to the RAs about their students that they expected. So they just shouted out names, and I said, yes, I talked to him. He's coming in tomorrow. Actually, no, they backed out 3 days ago. They're not coming. So we had these discussions.
Yeah.
And so then there was the first meeting of all the students, and Carol came up to me.
Yeah, so we were at a retreat for all the students. And at that retreat, I saw David, and I had 3 people on my list that were not there yet. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, did you get my message?" Because I had left him a message with the names on the voicemail. And I said, "Did you get my message?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, I have 3 different people that are not here yet." And he said, "What are their names?" And I said, I think one was Sarah. Oh, I don't know the other names. And I said, "I don't remember the other ones. They're on your voicemail." And you said,
I said, Miss Taylor, I get hundreds of calls every day. I don't have time to check my voicemail right now.
Oh, I was livid. I was livid because what I heard, he may have said it like that. What I heard was, "Miss Taylor, I get hundreds of calls every day. I don't have time to check my voicemail." And immediately I went from like, okay, I have to talk to David. He's kind of annoying, but whatever. I went from like down here. It immediately escalated. Every ounce of anger I had in my body. And I replied with, "I'm sorry. I forgot. I forgot you were the David Evans. I forgot you were so popular."
It was like that, except there was much madder. And she put her hand next to her neck like this.
I forgot you were the David Evans. I forgot you were so popular.
And I was just bewildered because she stormed off in a huff.
Yeah.
And I just looked up at the sky and said, "She thinks I'm popular?"
Yeah.
I was very confused. I'm like, was
she
really angry at me just now?
I was so angry.
I had no idea where that came from. She's angry at me. She thinks I'm popular. So I pondered that for about a day. But what just happened? What happened to you?
Oh, so then I walked over and I sat down. I talked to several of my friends, and they were like, "Oh, you're talking to David." And I was like, "Oh, that guy gets on my last nerve." I was like, "You will not believe what he just said." So, of course, I rehearsed it to them, and they were laughing. They thought it was hilarious because most of them knew David better than I did. I just really knew him from a distance. The only real conversation we had was about the voicemail. We had a couple of sidebar conversations where he would say something semi-nice and I would reply with something semi-sarcastic, and that was it. So we really didn't have a whole lot of conversations. So we had that situation that happened with the voicemail. And then it was probably maybe a couple of months later, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about different people that we knew, mutual friends that we had at college. And we were talking about guys because it's what girls do at college. And we were talking about different people. And I said, "You know somebody I cannot stand?" She said, "Who?" And I said, "I cannot stand David Evans. He just gets on my nerves. He's so annoying."
That's true.
And she said, "Really?" And she said, "David is actually a really nice guy." And I was like, and she said, "His brother Ben got here first, and then he came, and his parents came." And she said, "The whole Evans family, they're really nice people." She's like, "He's just so quirky and fun. He's really funny. When you get to know him, he's really a funny guy." And I was like, and I said, "You know what? Honestly," her name was Katie. And I said, "You know what, Katie? I really don't know the guy. I just know that he really aggravates me." And I said, "I really hate it when people make a judgment about me, but they really don't know me and they've not taken the time to get to know me or even try." And so I said, maybe I will just stop trying to hate him. And so I made an intentional effort that night to stop hating him. And
so that manifested itself in a terrible prank that she played on me. Tell them about it, Carol.
So the girl that worked in the admissions office when we very first met, her name was Mandy, and Mandy happened to be in my dorm. So she came in one night and she said, "Hey, I was almost late for curfew." And Mandy was such a sweetheart. She is such a sweetheart, and she never broke any rules. She's just like the kindest, most like gentle personality. She's a very gentle, sweet person. And she said, "I was almost late for curfew, but I was in the admissions office working late, and David said it was okay if I was late because you would do anything he said." And I was like, "Do what?" And she said, "David
That's not how I meant it."
She said,
she literally, she is a nice person, but she
Mhm.
threw me under the bus
Mhm.
on that one.
Mm-hmm. And she said, "David said it was okay because you would do whatever he said. So it didn't matter if he was late. I was late for curfew." And I said, "Are you serious? He said that?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what we should do? We should play a prank on David that I wrote you 20 demerits for being 20 minutes late." Now, I very rarely wrote demerits for anything. And I would never write Mandy demerits for being late for curfew, especially working for the college.
Well,
I would never do that.
She was also late because she was serving at a ladies' banquet that night. She was working for the college,
and
so
then
she would have been
at
late.
admissions office. I think she worked in the admissions office late or something after that.
Just to pick up a file for
Anyway, we crafted a plan that I would write her fake demerits.
Diabolical.
And anyway, so we did this. We laughed, but thought it was so funny. And then the next day, she was going to tell David at work. And then I went and told David's dad, because as the dean of students, he typically knew everyone who got demerits. And if anyone wanted them off, you have to sign for them to be taken off their account or whatever. So I told David's dad the whole thing. And I was like, Dr. Evans, you will never believe what just happened. Here's what happened. We laughed about it. We thought it was funny. And I told him that I was going to write Mandy fake demerits. I said, so when you see these demerits, they're not real. Just know that they're not real. They're all fake. It's all a joke. So we thought it was going to be great fun. No problem. I love to play pranks. I got that from my mom. And I did not realize at the time, I do now, I did not realize what a rule follower he is. Like, he is such a rule follower. He's the peacemaking middle child, and I'm the youngest who is perfectly comfortable to carve out my own path somewhere. Like, I'm good with that. And he's not. So
yes, as a left-handed middle child, I've been a rule follower. Yeah. I'm not sure it's been worth it for 40 years. But Carole has helped me come out of my shell at least a little bit.
Yes,
but
I have.
Yes, the next day, Mandy comes in and says, oh, by the way, Carole gave me 20 demerits. And I got upset. Now, for the first time, I'm mad at Carole. You know, what goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And then I didn't know why. And I thought, how dare she? I mean, Elena, Mandy, and I are the ones who helped get her into college. I've been here now for 9 stinking years. And now Mandy's here working for the Lord late in the admissions office, and she has the unmitigated gall to write her demerits. Now, my dad's the dean of students. Now, I worked very hard not to take advantage of that. I never went to my dad to ask him to fix anything. And I wanted to be very careful about that. You know, even some friends would say, hey, can you talk to your dad? I'm like, nope, that's not me. I'm not going to play the nepotism card, but this made me mad. So I walked the 50 steps down the hallway. Respectful. I worked on a speech for my dad, and I said, I don't understand what Carole's thinking. Mandy was here working for the college, serving the Lord with a joyful heart. And I say, I understand Carole's probably following the rules, and she may have done the right thing to write Mandy demerits, but you can do the right thing and take them off. I'm going to bat for my secretary. And after I'm finished my marvelous speech, Dad says, do you know why Carole did that? She did that because you said that she would do anything you say. And I thought back to the previous stunt. I'm like, what is she talking about? And I didn't understand it because it was late. We were all tired. We're joking in the office. And I remembered that Amanda's like, oh, I'm going to be late. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, sometimes RAs are more strict than others. And I'm thinking, well, who is your RA? She said, it's Carole. I'm like, oh, Carole, you mean little Carole?
As we pause the story here, I want to leave you with this reminder. Where you are right now has purpose. And even if it feels unfinished and unexpected or a little unclear, when we look back at the early parts of our story, it's easy to see how much we didn't know at the time. The path we assumed we were on, the plans we thought we knew, and the ways God was quietly working long before we could see where it all would lead. If you're listening today and you feel like you're in the middle of something and you're waiting and you're wondering and you're walking through a season that doesn't quite make sense yet, I hope this reminds you that God is still at work there too. This story isn't over, and neither is yours. In part 2, we'll pick right back up where we left off, and we'll show how God took all that felt uncertain and He slowly brought it together in ways we could have never planned. And as you get to know David more along the way, you'll see why he'll be back for more episodes this season, because this is just the beginning of the story. Thank you for being here and listening and trusting me with a piece of your time. I'll see you next week for part 2.